The first one averaged 2,300%. That means that if in January 2016 you put in $1,000, you would have ended up with $24,000. If you put in 50K, you would have ended up with $1.2 million. That's $1.15 million made in 5 years. So without further ado, let's just jump into the list. Okay, so before we go on with the video, I'm just going to read through the list of ETFs and returns first. Then we'll dive deeper on each list to see what's what. And if we look at the returns indicated here on the right, you can see that the fifth one returned 865% over the past 5 years, while the first one returned 2,300% over the past 5 years. So unsurprisingly, for those of you who keep up with the news, it is technology ETFs and more specifically semiconductor ETFs that have witnessed the highest return in the past 5 years. 2 of these ETFs are semiconductor ETFs and 2 of these are technology ETFs. Now there is an outlier, which is TQQQ, which is Pro Shares Ultra Pro QQQ, which is basically just a 3 times leverage of the Nasdaq 100. So it can be misleading to say that TQQQ is not a technology ETF, since many of the top Nasdaq 100 companies are technology companies, but many of these companies are not directly technology related, like Pepsi, Costco, or Starbucks. Now, we should note that all these ETFs have witnessed a massive rally in 2020. All of them more than doubled in value last year, outperforming the S&P's 500 16% return this year. It makes one of the best years of the S&P 500 look weak, doesn't it? But even before then, these ETFs have been steadily climbing in value for the past 5 years. The 5 ETF price charts look the same. We have an upwards trend from 2016 to 2018. And around the 2018 to 2019 period, the ETF slowed down, as does the rest of the economy, and some even decline in value following the downward trend that we've seen across the market that year. But then again, around March 2020, they dip, only to come back at full speed, and you probably already know what happened during this period. Some of them doubled or even tripled in value compared to February 2020. So the question is, how did these ETFs outperform the market so much? So, how do they do it? Well, all these ETFs share one little dirty secret, and that's they're leveraged. Basically, the first 3 on the list are 3x leverage daily long, and the 4th and 5th are 2x leverage daily long. Now, personally, whenever I hear leverage, I'm out of there. I don't care about what it is. Like, I know that as a young person, I'm supposed to be more risky with my investments, but I don't want to owe any money to anybody. No bank, no loan sharks, no nothing. But before you grab your things and dip, let's just dive a little deeper into what it really means to have a leveraged ETF. You're going to quickly find out that it's not the same thing as leveraging money for options or anything else. So here's how it works. While regular ETFs, they trade the underlying securities, leveraged ETFs, they use derivatives like option contracts and then all that jazz to magnify exposure to a particular index. So when it says that an ETF offers a daily long at a 3x leverage on index Y, it means that each day a long call option is taken at a 3 times leverage to that particular index. And this essentially means that the ETF is betting each day that the index will have gone up by the time the contract expires, which is the end of the day. Now, how does all of this translate into wins and losses for us, the ETF owners? Well, this whole 3x leverage shenanigans translates very easily into more exposure. That means that when the market is bullish and people win big, you win even bigger. But also, if the market is bearish and the index loses value, you lose even more. But unlike other leveraged tools that you could use to magnify your exposure, you don't owe any money to anybody if you lose it all. You only lose your initial investment. And that's one of the advantages of getting exposed to these option contracts without actually buying the contract and just going through an ETF, is that even if you lose money, you don't owe any debt issuing institution any money. There are, however, 2 major downsides for leveraged ETFs. 1, you can very quickly lose your money waiting for an upside. And 2, they have extra management fees because these option contracts and the leverage, they cost money, they cost extra capital, so you have to pay for it. So let's go with a real life example to try and illustrate the points that we have made so far. So let's say that after this video, you decide to go and put your money in the TQQQ, which is the Nasdaq 100 with a 3x leverage. So that means that if the Nasdaq 100 goes up by 1%, you'll go up by 3%, minus the management fees, of course. But if the Nasdaq goes down 1%, then you lose 3%, but you also have to clear contract options costs and the leverage costs. So that means they actually lose more than 3%. You lose 4% or whatever, depending on the ETF. If you invested $1,000 on this ETF, and on the other side you have an investor that put in $1,000 on the regular Nasdaq 100, he would have only lost $10, but he would have lost $40. And this is one of the disadvantages of leveraged ETFs. You can spend so much money waiting for an upside, and then when the upside comes, it's not that big, and you barely make enough to compensate for the lost value because of the management fees, because of the leverage. So you have to think about these leveraged ETFs in another sense. They're not a guaranteed way to make money, and you can spend a lot of money on the leverage and option contracts, all the management fees, and not make it up. So you only have to use these leveraged ETFs when you truly believe that the index they are exposed to is going up. It's surely going up. It's going to come as soon as possible. Otherwise, it might not be worth it. It depends on the calculations. You have to do the math. You have to keep this in mind. These leveraged ETFs, they amplify gains, but they also magnify losses. If you go up, you go up big. If you go down, you go down big, and you also pay management fees either way. So you can only use them if you truly believe the index is going up.